So between 3 and 3:15 in the morning in Sicily, I wrote down quickly a manifesto which I would like to read to you. I would like to call it the Minnesota Declaration. Truth and Fact in Documentary Cinema, and it has the title Lessons of Darkness. And the lessons are numbered. 5. There are deeper strata of truth in cinema, and there is such a thing as poetic, ecstatic truth. It is mysterious and elusive and can be reached only through fabrication and imagination and stylization.
Hello. Welcome to today's podcast. This episode has been in the making for about, I would like to say, 5 to 6 months or more. And we are finally convening to do this episode. Before I introduce the topic of the episode, we have a new guest. So first I'll introduce him. Along with him, we have Aryan and Ashwini, who have come in other episodes and to talk about, I think Nolan was the one, Ashwini came recently, and Aryan keeps on coming, which is a good thing. So, the new person I have to introduce is Amit. He's a friend from Instagram. We connected on Instagram. We've talked a lot about film, a lot of some like things we like, a lot of things we don't like, football, etc., etc. But yes, Amit, please. He's a film enthusiast, of course, which is why I've called him. I'm not gonna just call everyone on the podcast who is not into film. But yes, Amit, go ahead. Please introduce yourself, where
Um,
you everything,
yeah,
whatever.
okay, fine. I'm Amit. I'm from Kerala,
Yes.
and yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, technically, I'm not.
Who
This is not really my first time on this
Yes, that's
podcast.
true. Actually, me and Amit have recorded one episode, which was a great episode, but the audio quality was really bad, so we couldn't release it.
And we
But
planned another episode.
did we?
Yeah, the whole Nanpagal thing, right?
Oh yes, the Nanpakal thing. Yes. Plan. Yeah, we have. I mean, there are so many episodes that are planned and not happening. It's a bit mind-boggling, honestly.
I
But
guess
Amit will.
we,
Yes, go
I
sir.
guess we planned the whole Charlie Kaufman thing when I was still in first year, I guess.
First
Now
year
I'm
of
in
college.
third year. Yeah,
So
now I'm
yes,
in third
you can see how much time this has been in the making, I suppose.
year.
But finally, we are here. Four of us are here to talk about a filmmaker we love. I think whoever's not aware of this filmmaker, I think before even we start discussing about it and him, I would really like you to watch his films even before our discussion convenes, just because I think he's one of our most essential filmmakers working today, and we really want to try and cover his filmography in detail and talking about specifics, what makes him so good in today's day and age. So I think the person I'm talking about is Jafar Panahi. He's an Iranian filmmaker. For whoever is not aware, he came up during sort of 90s Iranian New Wave. He worked with Abbas Kiarostami as the legendary sort of Iranian filmmaker as an assistant director. Then he made the his filmography is essentially divided into two halves. So one of it's pre-arrest and one of its post-arrest. We'll be discussing the post-arrest phase, but his pre-arrest work itself is great. A lot of it's been awarded, nominated in festivals like Cannes, Venice, Locarno, Berlin. So please do check those films out. The titles are White Balloon, The Mirror, The Circle, Offside, and Crimson Gold. So that's what all he did before the period of films we are going to talk about, which is I think 2011 onwards. So he got arrested in 2010 in March. Essentially, he's a filmmaker who's never operated in accordance with what the government wants. He's someone who's always been against them in ways which have been coy and very sometimes coy and oblique later on, I suppose, but very clear about what things he thinks are not correct in society, are not just in his society. And I feel as the sort of supreme leader, I think Ali Khamenei, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, of Iran and everything. Sort of he at in sort of March 2010, Iranian authorities sort of went and arrested 15 plus guests with Panahi, his daughter, and his wife also, I think. and they charged him with propaganda against sort of Iranian government. And initially, I think it was meant to be a 6-year imprisonment and a 20-year filmmaking ban. He got out on bail, but the filmmaking ban is still in place, right? And he has made 5 films during that time. Recently, I think he again had gotten arrested, went on a hunger strike, and sort of was needed had to be released in an act of. So he's consistently fighting. He's consistently making films, and all we can do essentially is talk about them. And it's nothing like it's a nothing task for us to do it, but it's something hopefully we can illuminate or elaborate about what makes his films so special. Before we start the discussion of his films, I want to make it very clear that one of the things that I've recurrently sort of read and heard about Jafar Panahi's films, whenever I watch a film and read reviews and everything, is this sense that it doesn't really matter the quality of his films. It's that the fact that he's making films itself is a big thing, right? I think that's the recurrent sort of emotion there. I really want to push back against that, if anything, in this episode, because I don't think the circumstances dictate his productions, but they don't dictate his production quality. That's very important to me, because I think he's a great filmmaker who's making sort of infinite spaces with the limited space he's given. And I think it's very important for us to acknowledge that as film lovers also, right? I think I don't want to have this sort of I mean it's there, but I don't want it to be like the watermark for his post arrest phase in a way. So you can take that as a sort of personal thing from my end, but I do really feel that we should champion him as a filmmaker also sometimes, like not just the fact that he's operating in really that is crucial also. I'm not denying that. It's just that it is not the significant factor, or like the caveat, sorry, not it's not the caveat that he is making lousy films. He's not. He's making incredible films, and we are going to be talking about.
Not only that, if nothing, then it's only helped his technique evolve to greater extents.
Yeah,
As you pointed out offline, that he operates in these, whatever you said about, he operates in these mini spaces and then creates different dimensions and adds on to those
yeah,
layers. So yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, I think, yeah, we should. So, any other thoughts, guys, on Jafar Panahi? Opening thoughts, and then we will dive into This Is Not a Film, Taxi, and No Bears the Most, and we'll skim over without spoilers on Closed Curtain and Three Bears, Three Faces. I'm gonna
Faces.
so
Deliberately did that, didn't you?
no. I was waiting for you to correct me, Aaron.
Three
Three
bears and no
faces.
faces.
Yes. Three faces. Yes. My God. Anyways, but Ashwini and Amit, any other thoughts on opening thoughts on Jafar Panahi?
Um, I'm not really sure.
Okay, fine. We'll go. Ashwini.
Yeah, so my thought around Panahi that like just appeared to me was that he is sort of evidence to the a lot of things that different filmmakers find aspirational, or perhaps I mean, there is an ideological utopia towards which a lot of filmmakers operate, and this is what I learned from talking to them doing my MA dissertation. So, and Panahi in some ways or the other is a very perfect symbol for that. And like you were mentioning, and this thought originated from your idea only, like you said that he is seen creating infinite spaces from the limited spaces that he is accorded. And in that, I realized that actually he is in his films, which are very much rooted in his reality, is not creating a certain representation of reality, but a presentation of truth. And again, so when I say presentation of truth, I was trying to borrow from Herzog's Minnesota document, if you guys have heard of it, where he mentioned how truth is elusive. Truth is not something that can be merely captured by observation. It has to be revealed, and that revelation happens in the process, and that process is something Panahi has perfected. Like he is able to bring the elusive truth out, and in that act itself, he is creating a presentation of the truth rather than creating a representation of reality. Now, I'll dwell on this idea more. It's not completely my idea. I think Pratik Vats, the director of E Bale O, and uh, he talked to me and he sort of gave an insight about how he views documentaries to be presentations of truth rather than being representations of reality, because representation is a in many ways is a problematic word, right? So so i'm i'm borrowing from a lot of different ideas, and I'm seeing Panay as someone who has been able to be the living piece of evidence for the aspirations of a lot of filmmakers, you know. So
Yeah.
that is, I think, my opening position on Panay, and I would
Yeah.
like to, you know, expand on this only.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is the most gushing thing you will hear from, like, the most gushes in any episode I think you've ever heard, because I don't think we anything there is much to be. We are not critical in the sense here, but I don't know if there will be any critiques is my point, but let's see. Maybe there are few and far in between, maybe. But yes, we'll begin with This Is Not a Film, which is made in 2011, and it's the phase where he's waiting at his house in Iran for the sentencing he's going to get from the court. And this film is famously notorious for the way it was sent to a film festival in a USB drive, which was found in a cake, right? Like they stuffed it inside a cake and it went to, was it Cannes or Venice? One of them it was.
I guess
But
it's Khan.
Cannes. So yeah, okay. So yes, so again, this whole idea, the whole production history of the film, I think, is sort of overtaken some of the film's own merit sometimes. Anyways, but the film, what do you guys think? We're going to be talking spoilers. I don't think in this film, especially, there's anything to do with spoilers as such in any case. So I think people who've not even watched it can listen through. But one of the things I'll definitely recommend is to watch his work chronologically, actually, because this film references a lot of his work from pre his arrest. But anyways, guys,
I
go ahead.
guess
Yes.
there's particular three films that this is not a film references.
Hmm.
The Circle, The Crimson Gold, and which was
Mirror.
the other one? Mirror.
The Mirror, which I think
And I
it
ha-
actually is one of the films that gets referenced a lot in a lot of his films. But yes, go ahead.
and I haven't watched any of them.
Watch all of them.
Yeah, definitely. I only
But
watched The Offside and White Balloon, like I
yeah,
said.
yeah. No, but
Yeah.
Amit, you.
Offside, I think it's his, according to me, it's his best pre-arrest film easily.
Mhm.
No, definitely I liked it very much. Offside
Yeah.
is just so good.
Amit, you can start first on This Is Not a Film. Though. What I know you watched it a while back, right? But whatever you
Yeah.
remember, whatever you think, the film, what struck you about it the first time you watched it?
Okay.
Okay, actually, you will think
I
first, right? Okay,
yeah,
Ashwini, you go first.
that's
I know.
better.
Sorry, I put you on the mark. My fault. Yes, Ashwini, go ahead. Oh, maybe we should do. I
Yeah,
don't know.
so for This Is Not a Film, I think one thing that struck with me when I watched it first 3 years ago was the fact that it's a film free from the obligation to be a film,
Yeah.
and it somehow is an act of defiance
Hmm.
and all of that. But and then in many ways it also has those flashes of being manifestations of a filmmaker's annoyance of his
Yes.
own, limitations, and
Yes.
you can see him being particularly annoyed because these are the limitations which are extrinsic to him. These are not
Mhm.
artistic limitations that are originating inherently to him,
Yeah.
which an artist can obviously engage and deal with. But when
Mhm.
the limitations are extrinsic in that manner, it's obviously shuttling,
Mm.
and yet the the very effort to render art as a process very fluid this way. And
Mhm.
what he is essentially doing with this is not a film, when he films it in an actual flat where he is home arrested, establishes the process of creation to be like water, where you cannot hold it. It
Mhm.
has to stop on its own. You
Mhm.
and it will take the shape of whatever space that it is occupying, but
Mhm.
it's not possible to confine it, strictly
Yes.
confine it,
Yeah.
right? And it has a very potent force of itself.
Yeah.
So and again, this is one thing. Second thing is, one might argue that for something like this is not a film is very is borderline incoherent, and
Mhm.
because there is no flow in like it is like they are present in traditional scripts where
Mhm.
you move from one event to another in a particular structure.
Yeah.
However, what I do I mean, how I view this is not a film is to be very constructivist in that nature, where there are parts and you see the parts and they are
Yes.
so sort of to read those parts. You have the conventional film structure
Mhm.
in your mind that you have understood in your experience being a cinephile,
Yes.
and then you read his text against that classical narrative structure that you have,
Mhm.
that classical narrative structure of a film, and you read
Yep.
his text against that. And and that this film is playing very strongly against that convention, very very
Well, no,
uh,
sorry, Ashwini. I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say that this is docu-fiction essentially, right? Like what you are saying also, it's like that mix almost of classical and I feel this is like almost like this is not a film sort of to me emphasizes what docu-fiction actually is in any case. That sort of,
and
what you
what
were
it's
saying about
capable
that
of.
unflow, what you're saying disruptive flow, right? To me,
Mhm.
it's basically like
uh,
two forces sort of like playing against each other in a way which you can see, but I think because you can see it, it's also has a very strange effect. And I'll speak about it after Aryan, but yeah, Aryan, Ashwini, any other thoughts? Sorry, I
no, no,
interrupted
no. So I'll be very happy if you guys pick up from this only.
you. Okay, yeah,
Go
Aryan,
ahead.
go ahead.
So I started watching Panahi's film chronologically, starting from The White Balloon and then Offside
Hmm,
and then whatever came later.
hmm,
And by the time I reached, this is not a film that came out in 2011 where he was basically put under house arrest. I started to dissect a bit how the comparisons between the inevitable comparisons that people make between him and Kiarostami,
hmm,
and I began to see how Panahi has always been more interested in focusing down and tapping down onto the struggles of women in Iranian society
hmm, yeah,
to amplify the larger scale of oppression that the entire nation is
hmm,
basically constantly living under because of the oppressive regime. Okay, and this is not a film. I think it is a film that marks the beginning of the phase where basically film became a medium of self expression for him.
hmm,
And we often see this debate going around in elite circles where you constantly keep arguing what are the merits of separating the art from the artist and where
hmm,
does the line exactly stand. Okay.
hmm,
Now, this is not a film, is basically the film where it started to become his personal life started to become so closely aligned with whatever his struggles were with the authoritative government at the time, that basically the thin boundary that often separates the art from
yeah,
the artist that started becoming permeable.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. And I still remember how I felt at the end of This Is Not a Film, where you don't need to go out of your way always to create these fictional avenues.
yeah,
And I don't know how much of that was planned, but the last shot of This Is Not a Film, where basically, from what I remember, he sees a fire being lit.
It's essentially it's firecrackers. People are celebrating, and that is you see it as a fire essentially.
Right down this apartment, right?
Apartment, yeah.
And that's where it ends. And
Hmm.
for me, and what we see before that is him going through this existential crisis when he's stuck in the apartment, and at a point he decides to take matters and things into his own hands. He says that all these films that I used to make once, they anyways used to stem out of my own mind, out of my
Hmm.
own creation. It's his creation. Then I
Hmm.
might as well start doing it myself and start blocking scenes and painting these scenarios by myself in my own apartment. But
Mhm.
then we start to see how that doesn't work.
Mhm.
And that is precisely why this is not a film, is not just a movie about this huge, hugely acclaimed filmmaker trying to get a film across countries to send it in film festivals, but it's
Mhm.
also a film about how filmmaking is always will always be a collaborative process.
Hmm.
And once you have an authoritarian regime that tries to dismantle it, you are
Mhm.
going to have this moment of crisis.
Of
But
course.
then the way things fall into place by the end of the film is quite
Hmm.
ironic, seeing how those contrasts are being created.
Yeah.
And I think the ending for that film it took me quite a while to get over that.
Yeah. No, I also want to mention before saying anything that this film is co-directed by Mojtaba Mirta Masab. He was a documentarian, and he's the one who's shooting Panahi in his apartment. And then Panahi later takes the camera on his own. But yeah, I think whatever you and Ashwini said definitely sort of resonates with me also. But I was one of the things because I had seen No Bears before this. This was my first time I watched it. I thought it was a great sort of flip side to No Bears. Like it feels like a great starting point for a filmmaker. And of course, the context at this point in time, and this is not a film, is that he's stuck in his apartment. He's having an existential crisis of sorts. Some of it's planned to be short, some of it's not planned to be short, and the whole tension between that sort of it breaks in the beginning only. I love how he integrates the mirror, the circle, and sort of crimson gold in his narrative itself. I think one of the notes I had sort of made is that he talks about letting his cast away, or like sort of that's the mirror thing when he breaks the sort of fourth wall essentially, and is like this all was planned before, but what you're going to see now is not planned essentially, is the mirror moment I feel in the film itself. And then he talks about how in Crimson Gold, like a performance of a amateur artist brings something with it itself. And I think in The Circle he's talking about location, and how location without being planned itself conveys so much about a person's state of mind and all that. I think I'll connect this to the ending, because I think all three of these things come inside the ending in some very amazing way. But Ashwini, I think, mentioned disruptive, and that is the exact sentiment I had with this. This film is consistently on off, on off, on off. I think that, like, it's this whole ability that he's wanting to tell a story, he's wanting to make a film. And I mean, it's ravishing to me how he actually narrates stories which he's not been allowed to made by the Iranian government in this film. Like I was so engrossed into his telling of the story, which I think kind of takes shape in Three Faces a little bit. But yes, so I think, like, there's so much even on that front that sort of fascinates me. But overall, the sort of governing sentiment of this for me is that disruptive rhythm, that idea of, and I think that's such a great itself becomes like a great, like, metaphor
Narrative
for
push.
how Iranian cinema in general is operating, right? Because it's like it's never allowed to continuously classically, as Ashwini was saying, operate and, like, go it's not allowed to flow. Because I think one of the key moments is when he's talking about his films, he's explaining the film he's making, he couldn't make, sorry, but then he interrupts himself and says, if I could tell films, why should I make them, or something like that. That push and pull between, like, wanting to make a film and almost making it by telling us everything about his film, and other bits and parts. but it's so broken up by these incidents, in the middle, which sort of prove what Ashwini was saying about the disruptive rhythm, I think. And that like really got to me, and I was incredibly moved by the film. And I think
What a
that
great way to amplify and magnify the same disruption that he is himself going through, and his career is
absolutely.
going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's, and again, like there's this really, I want to point this minor moment out where I think someone says, he says to Mujtaba, who's the cameraman at that point, cut. And the cameraman is like, you're not directing, you're not allowed to direct. We can't cut, I'll decide when to do all this.
Yeah.
But then you see when he's narrating the story and he says cut, and at the exact moment the camera cuts when he says cut, and like that contrast itself, I think, is so like incredible. And then later there'll be a moment where he says something about like, turning the camera away, cutting. That is not there, but like there's that one moment where it's in sync, and I think that's like so wonderfully done. And I think like this is the sort of thing I'm talking about, like, how the film is put together and edited also. Like I think it's incredibly perceptive the way they've done it. And
It's moments like those that make you go that it wasn't just a fluke, it wasn't just
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah,
instinctive decision that let's start shooting on the camera and then just for the sake of it we'll smuggle it out to a film
exactly.
festival.
Like I mean, one of the things was this thing slapped together. Like I think that's the whole sentiment,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
It might have been slapped together in terms of the footage they shot.
Hmm.
The way it's cut is not slapped together at all,
Yeah.
because it has a distinct flow to it.
Hmm.
The flow being a disruptive one, but it has that distinctive flow to it.
Hmm.
And the ending, I think, is sensational. The whole ending in the elevator is tense. It's funny. It's really funny because they don't know where they are stopping, and that channels his anxiety in any case, because he's taken the camera downstairs outside his apartment. The location comes into play of the elevator, what she talked about in Crimson Gold. The performance of the actor who he's with
The
is
delivery
sort of
guy,
natural.
right?
The delivery guy, his
Yeah.
story reveals itself very like itself through that situation. And I was just watching in awe, and I was like, what has he made? Because I couldn't imagine this film being made in that circumstance, being made this well.
Yeah.
So I think that's, sorry, I went off on one. Amit, you can please say something.
Okay,
Sorry. Yes, yes. Yeah.
So again, I watched it a while back, so
Yeah.
I don't have a lot to add. And
Mhm.
all three of you have already said most of the stuff that
Yeah.
I've already figured out. But
Mhm.
I've only watched it once,
Mhm.
and okay, the one thing that struck me so well was again the whole thing that you just mentioned right now, how
Mhm.
he introduces Crimson Gold, Circle, and Mirror. All three films, again, I have watched none of them.
Uh-huh.
And yet, he explains it very well, right? How the actor plays, the actor
Yeah.
directs the scene, how the
The amateur actor.
location,
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
how the location directs the scene. All
Mhm.
that comes into play at the end. And I was only thinking, like, okay, this is more than just a film that was smuggled out of
Yeah.
the country in a cake,
Yeah.
in a pen drive
Mhm.
for the sake of it, because it's more than that. It's just a very well made film. That was my first
Yeah.
impression.
And
Yeah.
that
I
also
mean.
goes on to say what kind of impression the film would leave on viewers like Amit, who might be discovering Panahi for the first
Mhm.
time through his post-arrest phase.
Yeah.
Exactly,
So you
like
instantly know the scale, the scope of what this man has accomplished and what where he stands and what has been taken away from him. Basically,
Yeah.
that he's left to shoot in a
hmm,
crammed apartment. Basically.
Yeah, I think it's that whole thing. What you, Shivani was saying, act of defiance. It is an act of
Mm.
defiance that this is. I think the thing is that this is a film. Firstly, this is many films.
I love the
Uh,
poster, by the way, the
yes,
way
yes,
it's
it's great.
oh, the
superimposed.
poster
Yeah,
is just
Fantastic.
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is an act, and the act of defiance here is that it's not just a film; it's a bloody great film. I think that's the act of defiance here. I think, and I mean, I actually think this might be my. I've been thinking about this movie so much since I watched it, and I've thought about all of his movies, but this actually might be my favorite. So yeah,
You know,
Ashwini, any other?
I was actually planning to. I watched This Is Not a Film around early last year or early in 2021, I guess.
Mhm.
And I was even before I started watching, I was like, I'll properly explore Panay now chronologically, and
Mhm.
I'll properly consume his post-arrest phase
Mhm.
films, work, whatever. And I watched This Is Not a Film, and I was like, no, there's no way I can just start his next film. I
Yeah.
need some months to get over this.
Mhm.
And
So
that's what
I've been
happened.
on a binge. So I mean, I've clearly been not following that advice. Ashwini, any thoughts? Final thoughts. Sorry, then we'll move on.
Can I add something?
Yes, yes, Amit. Yes,
Yeah,
I thought you
this
said
is
nothing to add. That's why I said
okay,
yes.
fine.
No, no,
Okay,
go
this
ahead.
is
Yeah.
definitely not about how good the film is, it's rather
Mhm.
about how influential the film is on a
Mhm.
personal level. Because again, why I clearly mentioned the whole actor being the director or the location being the
Yeah.
director, that thing is because I started to work on my short
Mhm.
when I was, when we were planning to do this episode.
Mhm.
So that was like the earliest kind of inspiration. Like I guess I've sent you a few notes about my films, right?
Yes.
About the short, and I've
Multiple
so
voice notes, Amit.
yeah. I'm sorry for
Yes.
that.
No, stop saying sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and I guess also I've suggested a few things that I could
Yeah.
probably try out,
Hmm. Yeah.
and some of them like I guess that whole inspiration comes directly
Yeah.
from this film in one way or the other, probably from entire Panahi's filmography, because one thing I've noticed is the dialogue is brilliant even though you don't understand the language.
Hmm. The subtitle
That is,
dialogue, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, even if it's subtitled, like the whole
Hmm.
way it is going on, I guess it's just a general Persian thing because
So
like
naturalistic only, like it never
it's very
feels like
naturalistic.
it never feels like, because he's
It
always
doesn't feel
dabbling
very
in
dramatized.
it's always dabbling in docu and fiction, so I think it needs to be
Hmm.
naturalistic to kind of con you even when it's like drama. So
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. uh,
And again, the acting. Okay, that was one thing I left out earlier. Like,
mhm.
I guess I've seen that Paresh Rawal video or something. I just possibly
Manish
see.
Raval video, what is
Yeah,
this?
I guess it is Paresh Rawal. I'm not really sure. Some actor mentions that
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Paresh
Iranian
Rawal.
films have some great acting and all.
Okay, okay, okay. Hmm.
Yes, like then I've only watched a handful of Iranian films before I watched This Is Not a Film,
Hmm.
including Panahi's two films, which is
Hmm.
Offside and White Balloon. I don't know why I
Hmm.
keep mentioning it again. And I guess
No problem.
Kiarostom is, I guess,
Repeat,
separation.
repeat, Amit, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Um,
Repeat. Stop saying sorry, but please repeat.
yeah, fine. So a handful of Iranian films I only watched a few of them.
Yeah.
And one thing I've distinctly noticed is that how good the acting is, because Jafar
Hmm.
Panahi is giving such a great performance in This Is Not a Film. And he's a
Yeah.
director, he's not a professional actor like
Yeah.
you expect out to
I
be.
think that's something maybe we should talk about more in his other films also, like his acting
Exactly.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Hmm.
becomes more evident, I feel, in No Bears, of course, and yeah, definitely in Taxi too.
Yeah.
But there are other performances in Taxi that just feels,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Taxi is a film of exceptional performances. I think we'll get to that first.
exactly.
But Ashwini, any other thoughts? Is Ashwini
Yeah,
there?
so actually, here only,
Yes. Yes.
I was going to sort of again pick up on what I was saying before,
Yeah.
and how why Panahi is so important in this conversation is because what we have to understand is how a camera engages with a certain reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like the presence of a camera not only disrupts it and disturbs it, but also creates two different realities of sorts. One is
Mm-hmm.
that is before the camera, and one that exists outside of it.
Yeah.
And you will see a lot of filmmakers, documentary filmmakers. I'm talking about. I'm not
Yeah.
talking about fiction filmmakers who
Mm-hmm.
are seen attempting to isolate themselves from the reality that is before the camera.
Mm.
Panahi is one person, through his process, he has proven that it's not possible to isolate yourself from the reality that is before the camera, right? And again, what he has also proven is that it is not also possible to separate the two realities. One is that is outside the camera and one that is before the camera, because both the realities are constantly engaging with each other. So
Yeah.
maybe they are not two realities at all,
Yeah.
and your camera is a part of the reality itself. So your camera has to be positioned within the reality that you are trying to sort of
Yeah.
observe through the camera.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to essentially say is that the reality that the camera is capturing is not a function of a certain thing, but it is a function of the camera, and
Mm-hmm.
camera is a very much a part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Like
this
it
is
matters. So just to clarify, so it matters where you put it, how you've put it, how it's, what it's looking at, what it's not looking at, right? Etc. Etc. All those sort of
Yes,
things.
but also it matters how it reached there. You know how
How
the
it reaches
camera
there.
reached
Mm-hmm.
there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is now again. So expanding on this particular thing, the first elusive truth he's bringing to the table through his this film. This is not a film, and Taxi, and everything that he made in the post-arrest period is
Mm-hmm.
that there is an arrest. That is one
Mm-hmm.
thing, which and there are very many constraints which are being put to the creative process in
Mm-hmm.
the socio-political landscape of Iran, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just not limited to Panahi. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that is one thing. Second thing that I felt that he is bringing to the table through his expression, and why this film is again important, is the fact that so, like you mentioned, that sequence in which he says, "Why make a film if you could tell a film?"
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very visible conflict in him and on his face also. Some
Yeah.
part of it is annoyance. What
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to say is that this is the very innate feelings of every artist
Mm-hmm.
whenever they face challenges to their own creative in their own creative processes,
Yeah.
and these challenges can be we commonly known some of them as creative blocks, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they are very tangible resource challenges, and then again, in Panahi's case, these are challenges which are legal and political in nature. So, what I'm trying to say is that the elusive truth he's bringing to the table is that a creative process cannot exist in isolation from the reality it is
Mm-hmm.
inhibiting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you are everything that you are doing to make it exist is only pushing against the wall,
Mm-hmm.
which has its own importance, because this is
Mm-hmm.
the reason why Panahi himself is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very remarkable how after making This Is Not a Film and Taxi, he makes No Bears, because No Bears is very self-reflexive that way, you know.
It's a
So
turn, total turn, I think. Like it
exactly. So
uh,
you were saying na, that we might not be critiquing Panahi so much because we are so much in gushing mode right now, but Panahi himself is critiquing
exactly.
his position.
Yes,
So,
yes. We'll get to
so
that in Nobes. I think because I think that's a it'll be I have a feeling after whatever 5-10 years also it'll be one of those texts which people will look back at and say that, oh, this movie came out because I mean award season is garbage. We've discussed this before,
I
and they
think it
failed to sort of
genuinely does something very new to the entire form of cinema. Like
absolutely.
it is something new within Panahi's filmography also.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So we'll move briefly on to Close Curtain and then go to Taxi because I think it's best to follow it
Yeah,
chronologically. Close Curtain, we'll only discuss spoiler free because Ashwini hasn't seen it. Aryan, I'll ask you for your opinions first, and you can keep them brief. It's fine. And I think just to mention, Close Curtain is a 2013 film. It's also co-directed, so it's directed by Panahi and co-directed by Kambozia Partovi, who's also stars in the film. It's shot by Mohammad Reza Jahanpana, so it's again not shot by Panahi. And I think it's Panahi's most divisive work from what I have gauged, and and yeah, I mean I think it follows neatly from This Is Not a Film, and it's a considerably more somber, despairing, almost dispiriting work. But yeah, Arin, go ahead. What?
So, Close Quarters is certainly not one of my favorite Panahi films, but it deserves great appreciation just for the fact that he himself might have recognized whatever he did with This Is Not a Film,
Mm.
and recognized what limitations and again what circumstances he's making the film under. And it's similarly structured, it's similarly if you look at where it takes place, it's basically again taking place rolling out in the same
In a
apartment building.
will
Okay.
different no villa, I think some seaside villa
Yeah,
this
but
time.
in a
Yes.
in a house,
In a
it's
house, yeah.
similarly
Confinement
restricted
is
within
yes,
within
yes,
four walls, right?
yes.
With closed curtains.
Which yeah,
So yeah, and halfway up until halfway through the film, you don't know what is going on. You don't know what the plot
yes,
of the film is. You don't know
yeah, yeah.
what is at stake. Okay, and he
We won't
cleverly
spoil it, but yes,
yeah,
yeah.
he cleverly acknowledges whatever that he's already done with such a setting. He's already done the best of. He's already made the best use of it. And This Is Not a Film. So here he introduces certain styles and a
Mm.
certain approach that just makes it extraordinary
Yeah.
on how it is structured basically, and whatever tools it uses. I'm trying not to spoil, but
Yes, yes, yes.
whatever tools
That's
it
okay.
uses to reinforce the disconnect that he has
Yeah,
from the society,
yeah, yeah,
from his own art form that he's so mastered.
yeah.
Okay, and I think there's some shots from the film that are again
Oh, absolutely.
you
Yeah.
have clearly just a few days back you have
Mm-hmm.
elaborated on them on Instagram,
Yeah,
and I think it is again one of the best endings that I've seen
yeah,
in film. And yeah, it's great. It's still
yeah.
not one of his best works, but it is
Mm-hmm.
still great.
Yeah. Amit?
And so, one thing I feel is like, from whatever I read, Panahi started making that film in a state of melancholy, and
Mm.
so there is that very deep emotional connection, which can be seen in his performance too. Like he isn't as active in some way like he is in This Is Not a Film, but
Mm.
he's still there. He's doing great,
Mm-hmm.
or at least whatever you can,
It's defiant in its last sequence, even though it ends on fire. I think the act that he goes, the fact that he goes down there and discovers, like, almost makes a new film with one person in the
Hmm.
elevator. I think feels more like an act of defiance. I think this is bittersweet in the bitter on the much bitter end. I think like it
Yes,
is a
yes.
yeah, yeah.
I certainly like the film. Again, there is
Mm-hmm.
no bad Panahi, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really think I can rank his films in some way
Mm-hmm.
or the other. It's definitely a very personal film to him, and I'll probably check it out later when I've finished the entire filmography of his,
Yeah.
which is right now, pre-arrest. After that,
Yes.
I'll check it out again and I'll confirm my thoughts again.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I think I'm much higher. Well, I think this is one of my favorite Panahis actually. So I like slow, dispiriting cinema, I suppose. Slow.
And yet
It is.
you end up falling asleep while watching Solaris.
I've slept. I've fallen asleep while watching Closed Curtain also. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the falling asleep thing is hardly.
You
But
probably
Solaris
closed your
He
curtains too hard.
very funny, very
Well,
funny.
Dhruv can't sit through Chelan either, right?
Which movie?
Oh, Nuri Bilge Chelan. Once
Oh,
upon a time in Anatolia.
I have different levels of problems about Chilan. I think we will discuss that later. I know everyone here is a Chilan fan. Sorry. But no, no, no. I was saying, I think it's mostly this idea. I read somewhere online that this is, it was quite funny, but this was
Yeah.
Panahi's Charlie Kaufman film. And
Yeah,
it
it has a lot
kind of
of
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
I guess
Even a
But
lot of critics have
I
called it.
stated that in my
Yeah.
like
okay, yeah. So
I stated like I guess it was like a synoptic in New York, something like that.
yeah, I get that. Okay, I understand that. I don't know. I think this is a better film than Synecdoche in New York. Sorry.
Okay, definitely I
Uh,
agree with that.
but But no, I just think it. I'm not going to spoil it, of course, but the way it converses with his feeling of being in between this scenario of not. I think there's a genuine guilt on an artist's part sometimes that they are making the art about themselves. That guilt of making a self portrait again, I think, is more there in Close Curtain. I feel he wants to actually not make a film about himself and wants to make a film about other people and other things. And I think that pain to me comes across in Close Curtain somewhere. Like I feel it's a film in which he wants to escape himself in some senses, but he can't. And that it's an emotion that sort of reverberates throughout it in very poignant ways, I think. And there's this one, I'll just mention this. There's a sensational image where he's facing like towards the
See?
left. No, I know which one you thought. I no, I'm not saying that one.
Yeah.
I'm seeing another one.
Okay.
He's facing to the left, I think, and on the right in the background, you see the poster of
For
the
Close
circle.
Curtains.
The circle.
The circle, sorry, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and which has the woman facing on the other side, and it's such a the image itself is like this whole dichotomy of an artist
Disconnect.
being torn apart
Yeah.
by the state, essentially, in sort of feeling like that, I feel. And so that's it. I think we won't discuss it more because I think a lot of people have it. That's one of its least seen films also. So anyone who's into slightly slower burn cinema, sort of like that, and into sort of it is a despairing film, into that sort of mood, please do watch it. I think I think it's kind of essential in just tracking how the films move, because the film ends at a moment where a car leaves, which is where we end up in Taxi,
Yeah.
which is 2015, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 2015. Which is going to be a proper discussion, spoilers, whatever, because I think one of his most seen films, I think, um, at least from whatever I know. And it basically, for me,
His most quoted film, I
quoted.
guess.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So
Yeah.
to me, this is just to sort of few people in who don't know about it, who haven't seen about it, but want to hear about this. I think it's a combination of his pre-arrest city films with his post-arrest anxiety-driven films. Like I think it's a good combination of them. Basically, him posing as a taxi driver and driving through Tehran, getting different experiences with different people, which include but are not limited to known faces, and there are plenty unknown faces, some good, some bad, but the known faces are the ones that I think are make the most impact, if that makes sense. But Ashwini, you can go for this because of course we talked about Close Curtain, and yeah.
Okay. I think I'll need
Okay,
someone else to
okay, fine,
start on this
sure.
one. I'll pick up on this.
Fine, I'll go first this time, so that Aryan, you can go next, and then Amit, and then
Yeah.
Ashwini can go. But yeah, so I think I watched it recently also. I think I rewatched recently. I watched it today. Today morning I watched it. So I really liked it, which, what a surprise, I really liked a Panahi film. But yeah, no, initially I slightly pushed back against the notion of loving it, because I think there were a couple of sequences in this where I did move over the ambiguity of it being a docufiction into feeling it is blatant fiction. I think there's one or two scenes where I was like, maybe the performance was like that. The particular scene I'm mentioning is of some person who's injured on the street and comes into the car and has his wife crying over it and all that. And I think that scene was like, I was less fond of it, but I sort of got around it. And I think one of the things I'll tell you, the moment when I really struck with it is this, again, when he stops the car in the middle of nowhere, like middle, when he's taking these two passengers who are having like this really well, humorous conversation about why they need to reach a place
Yeah.
with their two goldfishes,
Yeah.
essentially, to get them back there because of some superstitious reason, I think.
Hmm.
And he just stops the car in the middle. It's almost like he's gotten like this, shock or panic attack of sorts. And I was like, okay, like that just sort of breaks that flow of whatever humor is going again, where we can go back to the disruptive flow argument and how that sort of completely is there in this film also. Um, and I think once that happened, and once sort of the film meets familiar faces, and sort of by the familiar face I mean his niece,
Yeah.
It's not Hannah 100%, it's Hana probably, Hana, Saidi, who I think is just phenomenal. Like, I am very picky with my child actor performances. I find a lot of them very annoying. She was just like perfect, like in the sense that I was like, I wanted a full movie on her, just because she has that thing of being captivating as a child. Like, she's smart, she's really smart as a child. She's perceptive, she can see a lot of things. uh she's very funny. Like, the conversations she has with Panahi are great. Like, she puts him down a fair bit, and then it's basically like, you can't take a joke. And yeah, I think their relationship really made the film in some ways for me. And then we move towards the ending, which is heartbreaking in many ways. But before the ending, I think there's this lovely moment he has with the flower lady, and I thought the flower lady properly, it's like
That's what I
serenading.
meant when I said that it's too quotable.
Yeah. But the flower lady is lovely, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's the way you deliver that type of thing. I feel it's not the actual material. I think it's just the grace with which she delivers the thing about uh, let like what the country does to you, or what it has done to Panahi. And I think that sort of struck a chord, a very sort of gentle chord. And then Aryan had primed me a little bit for the ending which follows, so I
Yeah.
think it hit me a little less than it should have. But it is undeniably tragic, painful, shocking, and yeah, this is the ending I saw. The ending I saw, this similar ending I saw in Nasir by Arun Karthik. But
Okay. When did
yeah,
that come out?
later, after Taxi.
Okay.
So.
Again, I think that impact that the film leaves you with, that
Mhm,
deep sunken feeling, again, it
mhm,
has a lot to do with when you watch it. I thankfully
mhm,
watched it way back before No Bears and all these films came
mhm,
out, even before Three Faces came out, from what I remember.
mhm,
So for me, without knowing what would happen going
mhm,
ahead, and uh, without realizing what intensity a film like No Bears would end with.
mhm,
That's precisely why the feeling that I had at the end of Taxi has never left me. I don't think it
mhm,
ever will.
mhm,
And I think what you say when you talk about how it maybe plays with the docu-fiction angle too much,
mhm.
so much so that it takes you out of the film, and the
No,
film.
only honestly, only that one moment with
Okay.
that. No, nothing else. Like, I didn't think
Mhm.
much about the docufiction angle in this, apart from when it was
Okay.
with the. And in that, like in those sequences also, when it's focusing on these other stories, it's commenting a lot on society, Iranian
Definitely.
society at that time. So I think the
And
angle which, yeah,
that's
go ahead.
precisely what made the blend of what's real,
Mm-hmm.
what's not, even
Mm-hmm.
more fascinating for me to me, because it's probably his most evident film where it wasn't evident to figure out, to point out on what is real, what is fiction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you obviously brought up Denise's character, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is not only ineffable in terms of her charm, what
Mm-hmm.
charm she brings to the film, but it's also central to forming the emotional crux of this film,
Mm-hmm.
because there's this one scene that just adds another dimension to
Her
what this
camera
film.
work.
Yeah, yeah, no, not just the camera work, but
No,
just
no, no.
one
Her
exchange.
camera scene. Oh no, this is different.
Yeah, even
Oh,
that,
okay.
but precisely what follows after that, of her
Mm.
shooting that couple on the street through the car, right? When she says that, when she talks about how her teacher says to show
Yes.
what's real in class,
Yeah.
but not to show whatever,
Oh,
whenever the reality gets too real
too
or
good. Yeah.
unpleasant, right?
Yeah.
And I think that not only through her character, the film not only questions the rights and wrongs, the do's and don'ts of the society and
Mm.
whatever restriction it is functioning under, but she also questions the validity of what's real and what's
Of
film
course.
in this
Mm-hmm.
movie.
Mm.
So I think that character just, it's never left me. I only watched this film once primarily because of how shook I was with that ending, and I just don't see myself experiencing that level of and this is coming from someone who's watched Nobel's
No
thrice.
prejudice.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
still I think, and the ending, for anyone who's not watched, I'll be spoiling it, but what better way to show how you are constantly under the scrutiny of this authoritarian government than to end your film by showing these masked men come and steal the dash cam away from
You,
your
you
only
know,
vehicle of
I know.
that's viable for you to film.
After the film ended, I was note I had to take some notes, so I rewinded back and I saw this moment where he hears these sounds.
Hmm.
Only he hears them, and
Yeah.
I, like, when was watching first, I was like, is he okay? Like, in my, because he, throughout this film,
Yeah.
Panahi looks very agitated and
Yeah.
very flustered. I think, like, a lot
Hmm.
of times I was like feeling a little worried for him, because it was
Yeah.
this, because the characters around him are pretty jovial sometimes, and they're like,
Hmm.
lighthearted,
Playful, yeah.
and yeah, and he's like going out of the car at odd hours just to check people around him, and then I
Hmm.
rewinded it, and he hears those sounds, and there
Yeah.
are sounds of the motorbike that comes at the end.
So it's also adding
It's
on to
kind
that
of throughout.
paranoia. Yeah.
It's
Oh
that
God.
throughout thing.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, it no,
God,
no.
that.
The sound isn't throughout, but that
Okay.
paranoia, I think, is very,
Paranoia is
very
looming
throughout.
throughout. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's easily again one of the best movie endings I've ever seen. So
yeah.
much so that I don't want to sit myself through that experience again because of the sheer
So
intensity
you
of
can
it.
stop it
And
before that. You can stop at the flower lady.
what's the point? And the fact that when you see those masked men come and steal the dash cam away, you see in real time the director going out of focus in the frame, and the helplessness that you feel as the audience,
Mhm,
it's the same helplessness that we feel
mhm,
whenever we hear stories like this.
mhm,
And now what, it's just experiencing vicariously the same through a film that is being made under these circumstances. Again, it's profound.
mhm. Yeah. Amit.
Yeah, okay. So, like I said, I watched Taxi on a train. So,
Yes.
like Aryan said, it definitely matters where you watch it and how you watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I've already heard about the film way long back,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is interesting because I didn't know who Panahi was back then. I
Mm-hmm.
just read some article or something in paper,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the first time I've heard about this film. And yeah, that's just nothing really related to the film. Coming
Mm-hmm.
to the film, one thing I found is like even here he uses the whole establishing something and using it to create a contradiction, or evidently using it later on.
Yeah.
One thing is that the first conversations happening in the taxi is between um, you know about uh, what should be a crime or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not entirely sure how.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It's about
Yeah.
when does something become worthy of being capital death punishment, I think. Because I
Yes.
think one of
Yes.
the male customers at the beginning, the person who sits in the taxi in the beginning,
Hmm.
the male customer is basically like someone stole the four tires of the car and they should be hanged. And then
Yeah.
the person behind the lady sitting behind is a teacher who's basically like
Hmm.
a bit appalled, and then she questions him and he tries to justify his answer. And yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Exactly. And then later on, you see a friend of Panahi
Hmm.
explaining about an incident that happened to that
Yes.
guy, where again, there is some sort of contradiction there.
Yes.
Like,
No, I think the that guy who he meets, his old neighbor, I think
yeah,
doesn't complain about this
yeah,
couple who hit him,
he
because he
doesn't
knows that if he
complain.
complains that they'll get killed
Yeah,
or they'll get hanged. Yeah.
yeah, so he, another thing was
एक second,
obviously the
Amit.
kite.
Amit, sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
Re-say whatever you said. I couldn't hear what you said.
yeah. Sorry.
No, no problem.
The another thing was about the niece and her film
Mm-hmm.
of how she defines this whole. She has a set of rules, just like how every other Iranian filmmaker has to follow.
Yes. Not set. It's a constitution of rules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, so there's like a long set of rules, and then after, I guess, after this whole meeting with the friend thing happens,
Mm.
he asks her about, is that how that guy who's giving her the juice was something like that. I'm not really sure
Mm-hmm.
because I watched it like 1 month back, I guess.
Mm.
So, and then she says something back. I'm not really sure how the conversation went, but I guess there was one particular rule on how the names of the characters in the movie that the children were to shoot should be of Islamic names or something
Yes,
like that.
yes, yes, something like that. I am also blanking, but yes, there is some law on which names can be used, which names should
Yeah,
be used, which are pure, which are not pure, sort of like that. Yeah.
yeah. So like when he asks his niece about how this guy was the guy I guess who attacked his friend,
Mm-hmm.
which the niece obviously doesn't know,
Yeah.
and he asked something about the name. I'm not really sure the entire context there,
Yeah.
but there was something like that. So he's using, things over and over again, and it really works.
Working through it, I think, is what Amit was saying. Uh, if he will say again, can you say again, Amit? अश्विनी सर आप आ जाओ अमित को बाद में अमित का सेंटेंस बाद में पूरा करेंगे
Okay.
ये अपना डिसरप्शन था टैक्सी टाइप होपफुली नॉट एक्चुअली but
Like,
go ahead Ashwini. Yeah.
all the podcast people feeling that, anxiety when the speaker has left.
Arey, this is because Amit criticized Chup before, so maybe that killer is roaming around.
Uh, I
Go
also
ahead, sir.
criticize
I'm the
Chip
one
for
manifesting that killer.
Yeah. I think he's joining again. Go ahead, Ashwini. I'll message him to join.
Hmm, Taxi. I was, while you guys were speaking, I was trying to recall how much of that I view as a piece of journalism also,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't find. So I remember when I watched it, I was not finding a struggle in picking what is fictionalized, what is
Mm-hmm.
staged, and what is not staged, because
Yeah.
I accepted or convinced myself that everything is staged. And
Mm.
everything is staged here for a purpose. He has selected who will sit in his taxi because he's trying to make a statement, which is well within his rights, of course. And
Mm-hmm.
he's trying to also create, like I said, again, a presentation of the truth about the
Mm-hmm.
Iranian society. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and because every subject that occupies his space within the taxi has
Mm-hmm.
a story to tell, and that story brings a new dimension to the truth, to
Mm-hmm.
the larger truth,
Yeah.
and that is one thing. And again, he's also sort of on a very technical level. I think Panahi is attempting to experiment with the space
Mm-hmm.
itself because eliminate me on the closed curtain wala, but as far as I know, this not a film is completely of a flat house, and taxi is a mobile space,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is
Yeah.
obviously much more congested,
Mm-hmm.
and the entry exit points are very rigid,
I'll just
but it's also
Close curtains also pretty claustrophobic in the way it's shot. But yes, taxi is more so. I feel. Oh, you're right. Yeah.
so taxi is claustrophobic despite being mobile,
Yes.
and
Yes.
this this is not a film, despite being immobile, it's not claustrophobic
Yes,
because there is a
absolutely.
sense of security in
Yeah,
the house.
yeah,
However,
yeah.
that sense of security,
At least
uh,
until the security gets dropped off.
yeah, and
Hmm.
I mean, I'm talking from a very general perspective.
Yeah, I get
Mhm.
it.
House brings a sense of
Of
security.
course.
Yeah.
Hmm.
In his case, it also brings a sense of
Hmm.
imposition and
Yeah,
the whole idea of him being arrested there. So
yeah.
that and taxi within the taxi, I think the idea of him being arrested does not exist, but
Hmm.
confinement still does exist
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the taxi. And
I
Close
think
Curtain has been shot in auditorium of something, right? If
no, no,
I'm
it's
not
his
wrong.
house. His house.
Yeah.
His
Okay.
not house, villa, seaside villa, essentially. Yeah, which
Acha.
which is
Okay.
constructed in a way which looks like a jail. So I mean, or they've just made it look like a jail in the way it's constructed. So whatever. That's a
Mhm. Uh,
cinematographic feat. Except so
This
yeah.
takes a very different level altogether in Nowheres again. You see that there
Hmm.
is an entire habitation in which he is functioning, and yet
Yes.
the sense of confinement still exists.
Confinement, I think, is there all throughout the five films. I feel like the sense
Yeah.
of not being able to, find a moment of freedom, even in. I mean, there are moments of freedom actually, but few and far in between. So.
Yeah, but I'm not only speaking from the sense that, okay, because he's confined, that's why we have confined sense of confinement. I think he's trying to implicate himself, of course, but he's also,
Hmm.
so the I think best way to put it is that if you try to dissociate itself from the idea that
Hmm.
he's not house arrested or there is no ban on him, or let's say if you would play the film to an audience who does not have any idea about Panahi's political
Hmm.
condition right now, they will be able to feel the sense of
Yes.
confinement still.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's not
Absolutely.
just a function of your awareness that, okay, yeah,
Yes.
he's house arrested, that's
Yeah,
all.
yeah. You don't need to be you don't need to watch it in chronological order, but if you do watch it, there are there are different things you can gauge through. But if you watch it, like as Ashwini is saying, individually, you'll get a lot of what he's doing in any case. I actually felt, weirdly enough, the dash cam here, like, did it feel to you? Because I was watching it, I was like, whenever it shows like a car coming or something, I was thinking it's gonna like crash into their car. Like it felt bigger. I don't know the angles did or whatever it. But interesting use of, and then there's this really interesting use where he like turns the camera away to look at something and then turns it back. So it's like, suspense creation in that sense. I thought was magnificent. But
I think Pana uses the same technique na in
I
Hit the
Hit the
Road.
read the,
road.
I mean, you've given me a good segue, to be honest. Can I move on? I know taxi and segue, but Del sir, आप बोलिए, आप अपना sentence end कीजिए please. you
Yeah,
you
okay.
blanked out. Del is Amit, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, like I said, he creates this whole. He's establishes something, uses it again, which is basic
Yes.
filmmaking technique, of course, but
Mhm.
it is just very well put out here, which is
Yeah.
what I feel because um, again the whole set of rules given to the
Mhm.
niece. One of
Mhm.
them was sordid realism, I guess. Not really
Yes.
sure again.
The
And
two words you had written down as part of your
yes, yes,
notes. Yes, I will mention
I was waiting for
okay,
this.
okay,
Yeah.
fine. And the same thing is being mentioned by the flower lady, who is also an activist, I guess.
She's a lawyer.
IRL. Oh yeah, lawyer. Yeah, something like that. I'm not
Mhm.
really sure who it was.
A barred lawyer, barred by her own association. She says
Hmm.
essentially, if Panahi was barred by the Directors Guild, that's what's happening to him, or
Oh,
to her, essentially. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I guess she mentions offside too, with a reference
Yes.
to a very specific case, which is again real. So there is this very um great weird association of what is fiction and what is real
Mhm.
with the
No, but
kind of
I think she's mentioning the offside thing is, I think she mentions it that a similar scenario what he shot in
yes.
offside happened when
Hmm.
they were going to watch a volleyball game and they were
Yeah,
arrested.
yeah.
A couple of girls. Yeah.
I guess that thing happened in real. That whole incident.
Yeah, it must have. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Mhm.
I've seen some sort of article about that. So
Mhm.
like there is a whole lot of fiction in this film, as well
Mhm.
as there is some sort of reality to it.
I mean, the
And he
ending
just
is definitely, I'm pretty sure he made the ending.
oh,
There is no way that
definitely is.
yes, yeah.
Or just called them up कि अरे यार at least
Ah,
give
of
me
course.
back the
I
Yes.
mean, what
footage.
thief would drop the memory card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No.
so yeah, like that was some sort of a
Perhaps
metaphor.
they sent a cake with the footage inside.
No, please no.
Probably.
Yeah, just cut this out.
Can
Sorry.
I take the segue to the next stop? Briefly
Yeah,
again, Three Faces, which is his first
which is not three ways.
rural set. Three Faces, I said, right, this time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
you're correct.
Okay, so this is his first rural film, I would like to say.
Hmm.
Like it's outside Tehran and outside houses in which he's sort of cramped in because of the arrest. I think this is his
Hmm.
first film, sort of it outside. I think it's located near the Turkish Iranian border in one of the villages, and I feel that's a similar setting for Nobez also.
No best
Like
too, yes.
there's a different village, I think, but in that sort of
Yeah,
similar setting. But yeah, Three Faces is a similar setting. You were saying Panahi, Aryan. He's edited Three Faces.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I think, and this has a lot of those 360 panning shots which are there throughout in Hit the Road, I think.
Hit the road, yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
haven't watched Hit the Road.
Please watch it.
I have,
Great.
yeah, I tried getting a link, but
Oh,
didn't find it.
we will send
Yeah,
you soon.
probably.
What are you saying?
We have our own dealer, so
Yeah, yeah. Or we can contact the person in taxi.
Yeah,
The
I was
Omid
going to
guy.
mention him.
Yes.
Ahmed.
Yeah. Omid, yes.
oh
I
yeah.
think he'll be happy
I've
to
had so many homage back in
give.
school. Yeah.
Yes, but no, Three Faces is the. I think the way I sort of describe it is it's the rural companion piece to the Circle. I think
Hmm.
in many ways, and I think this is Panahi's actually the most distant in this film as a person, at least, because I think the story primarily is about this actress Behnaz Jafari. She's also
Safari.
like yeah, real name, real actress. She basically gets a video and online and sees some actor who actor from a village who is stopped by their parents for wanting to learn acting and wanting to become an entertainer. She watches the video and it's like a suicide video essentially, and she gets
Hmm.
really worried and goes with Panahi to this village uh, to find her and sort of I mean, she's distressed both because for her and because of her, because she's the one who's sort of embroiled in all this. So the film follows a lot about how they sort of how if she's well the question of if she's dead or not is not the main one. It's more or less a thing about them, how the two country people or the people from the countryside sort of navigate the situation once they in the rural country. Is the rural country any different, is it not, what kind of amazingly weird traditions do they have, and etc etc, but yeah, we'll go through it quickly. I my main note for this is landscape prison. Like I have not seen this. Like this is the prison in this. If the prison in that is the mobile prison, in this the way they shoot the landscape, it always feels like they are overwhelmed by it. Like there's no escaping that sort of rough. I think it's
Hmm.
rough, narrow, but also like colossal, and
Yeah.
like yeah,
Dwarfing their own
totally. It
personas,
feels
yeah.
like they are getting totally overwhelmed by
And I
it.
love how it forefronts puts in the foreground the supporting actresses, her
Mhm.
activism ahead
Yes,
of Panahi's
Panahi.
more reserved. And now you begin to see for the first time that
Mhm.
even he's starting to become more conscious of what he's saying, what he's
What he's
doing, where
shooting.
he's
Mhm.
going, yeah, of what he's
This
shooting.
has that little bit of what will follow in No Bear, where No
Yeah.
Bears, where there's
Yes.
this moment between the actor with Jafari and the real life person, the woman,
Yeah.
where Jafari calls her empty-headed, and she's like, "Oh, so you are like these people also? You are doing
Yeah.
this?"
Oh, amazing. I
Yeah,
think that we
yeah.
keep talking about how No Bears is his most self-reflexive film where he's basically critiquing himself. I think there's
Mhm.
echoes in Three
Oh
Faces
yeah,
where you
definitely.
begin to see those self-reflexive cracks begin to appear in
There's a
him.
literal
Cracks that
crack in
are
this.
cracks that in itself are secondary to whatever crushing of hope basically that the circumstances around him have dwarfed his
Yes.
existence in, right? And I think again, Three Faces, considering what budget it was shot on, how it was shot, I think it is extraordinary regarding how good and well lit the night sequences in
Oh,
this film
it's
are.
the best. I would argue almost the best cinematographic thing Panahi has done, and there's a lot to
Yeah.
compete for.
Hmm.
But what was I saying? I forgot. Amit, any
Yeah.
thoughts on Three Faces? Oh, I was about to say
Three.
it's quite funny actually in
Yeah, I
places.
think
Yeah.
all some of his films, not some of his films,
Taxi is very funny.
I think
Taxi is
he has
definitely funny.
always had this in his post-arrest
Very
period, this
very
very
like dry.
Kafkaesque humor, very everyday like
In this, though, in Three Faces, there's that whole incident which is just kind of downright hilarious. I don't want to spoil it for Ashwini, but there is one superstition that gets
yeah, yeah, I
explored
know what
where,
where
yeah,
she
yes, yes,
sits with them
yes, yeah,
on
with the
the
person,
yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah, that is amazing.
the gift
and
that is given, yes,
and it is hilarious, but it is
yeah,
also very unsettling in a very
yeah,
sly way because of how
absolutely,
matter of factly it is
yes,
spoken out by that man.
yes,
and
yes,
and the shot, I still vividly remember, it's been a long time since I watched Three
hmm,
Faces. I still remember how that scene is juxtaposed, how what follows after that scene. It's a very long as shot of Panahi sitting and waiting for her to come back in the car,
yes, hmm,
and then the fact that while they're going back, they literally get disrupted. Okay,
yes,
uh, they can't go right
yes,
away, right back to their place.
hmm,
And the fact that they have to spend the entire night, spend the entire day sitting
hmm,
back at that village where
hmm,
they both are feeling very paranoid,
yeah,
and the fact that you stay with them
yeah,
as they navigate their own
hmm.
selves through that space, it's
It's
amazing.
very mazy, the
Yeah,
village.
yeah.
But yes, Amit, you were saying?
Yeah. Again, Three Phases, I guess, was probably the second most. No, I'm not really sure. I guess Closed Curtains was
I think
the
No
second
Bears gained
last.
a lot of traction because of the second arrest. Uh, and
Exactly.
Criterion released it online, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Three Phase, I think, again, whatever I might say would probably be a spoiler. So I'd like to keep it very abstract.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like you said, it's much more focused on the actress
Mm-hmm.
Jafari rather than Panahi.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, this is where you really feel like Panahi has been um, taking the position of an observer in most of his films post
Mhm.
arrest,
Mm-hmm.
which again goes on to Noves, and I guess it would be better to discuss it over there.
Wow, you're doing
I
my
think,
job. Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think again the same him playing in as the observer. I think the same passivity with which he approaches, at least on paper on screen,
Mm.
his own passivity also informs how tired he's just
Yeah, yeah.
become
He
of
looks
this
tired in
constant.
this also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I mean that in a like it helps. It sort of informs the performance also, and
And it also
Hmm.
goes to show that no matter how passive or rigid you become, if you're living in a country that
yeah.
clearly has these social and political issues that need to be addressed, you are anyways inevitably going to find yourself in the middle of a ruckus.
Absolutely. I mean, it's. I think one of the. I won't. This is not a spoiler, but one of
Yeah.
the things which was very telling in this, and it's kind of moving because I've seen No Bears and I've seen the other ones.
Mhm.
Panahi is basically like she asks him, are you going back or something? And it's nighttime, and like the actress asks him, and he's like, no, I will sleep in my car. This is probably the place
That's
in
the shot
Iran
I
where
was referring
In
to.
Iran where
Yeah.
I'm most safe, or like I'm the most safe. And I was like, it's quite sad. Like, and to be honest, there are hints in which that safety is also jeopardized in this.
Yeah.
So like it's that idea of, safety is not something that is very easy to come here. Actually, what just one last thing, and then we are moving to Nopez. Is I There is this one shot that happened, and it's like the briefest. Because I just watched it, was like 3-4 seconds, and the camera lingers on it. Is the shadow of these three women dancing
Oh
in a
God.
house? I
Oh,
was like,
that has
I was
wrecked
like,
me. I'll be
yeah,
very I genuinely wept when that
yeah,
scene came because of
yeah,
how that Panahi films are going to end on this high emotional cathartic note.
hmm,
But when I got that
hmm,
moment in the middle of this film, I was like, oh my God, I
yeah.
wasn't
It's
expecting this
very
at this point.
poignant moment,
It's
and one of the
fantastic.
very few moments of, where you see joy, but you see it through, of course, a
Behind closed doors.
silhouette behind
Yeah.
closed doors. uh, we are going to open doors.
Yeah.
I don't know how to transition. I think Amit did it better. But yes,
We
no
can open the
bears.
doors because there are no bears. These are only paper
Mm.
bears. These are only stories that people make up
Mm.
to make
Scare people
preserve
away.
a
That's it.
semblance. Yeah,
Mhm.
to maintain a semblance of power and superstition.
Okay, I'll let Ashwini and Aryan take over for this. I'll take a back seat. And you, so you can start, Aryan, then Ashwini, then
No, no, I think Ashwini go ahead
Ashwini.
because
Okay,
I have so much
you
to
just
say
rewatched
about
it,
this
right?
film, and
Yeah. Hmm.
I'll just try not to have a breakdown
Okay,
because yes, I love this
Ashwini, go
film.
ahead.
Go ahead, Ashwini.
So three bears ka discussion was long enough. Now coming to no faces.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are many things that one can say about no bears. One of the most important things is that no bears to me represents a set of lies
Mm.
which are told to hold people or subjugate people in their places. And it's
Hmm.
also it's also reflected in that very brief scene in which Panahi's time is engaged by that person he encounters while he is going to
Yes.
that ceremony thing
Hmm.
before testifying, right? And he just lies to him because he needed some time with him
Hmm.
needed to borrow some time with him
Hmm.
from him.
Yes.
So
Mm.
Nowheres is a lie. It's an outright lie which is used, but it's also a lie in which faith is invested.
Hmm.
So, and by that, by the virtue of the faith, does that lie becomes a truth or a
Hmm.
functional truth, if not a constructivist truth, at least a
Hmm.
functional truth, which
Mm.
Hmm.
which exists on its appearance. Now, so my most important takeaway from Nobels was obviously there is a lot to say about the nature of truth itself, how it deals with truth, how the film
Hmm.
deals with truth, but also it's also talks about uh, what is the aftermath of the of filmmakers' intervention in
Mm.
any reality,
Yeah.
which sort of makes a larger commentary that you cannot advocate to distance yourself
Yeah.
from the reality you inhabit in the process of documenting it. So
Yeah.
this is very specific to documentary filmmaking.
Hmm. I think there was
Observation.
this. I'm not. I'm not. Can I interrupt? Just very small
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
Was
go
there
on.
a thing with the elephant whisperers recently? Was it something related to this, like the whole uh, controversy that happened, that someone shot it and like or was it something else? I'm just confusing it with no best type of revealing the truth and not sort of. Uh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of it. Also, there was some
So
controversy.
There's been a
because
lot of
no,
controversy around that film actually.
yeah, I mean the Elephant Whisperers controversy is primarily about how the couple on which the story is based has not been compensated
Yeah.
properly,
Okay. So
right?
that's different then. Yes. Okay.
And it's not just a compensation in money wise, but also like everything else.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
so borderline becomes exploitative. No, this is a question that documentary filmmakers have been grappling with forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like whenever they are whenever they are documenting their subject or event or whatever they are trying to make, they are exploiting as part of reality,
Mm-hmm.
right? And most of the aware documentary filmmakers have accepted and embraced this fact that yes, they are exploiting a reality because their motivations are bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Panahi nowhere sort of proves that there is no other way. You are exploiting
Mm-hmm.
and you do not belong there. So that is the first thing. Okay,
Mm.
you as a tourist do not belong there, and as an inhabitant, you need to remove the camera. If the camera is there, and no matter what, how much time you spend with them, you can never be them.
Mm.
Okay, so and that very practice is exploitative, and the aftermath of exploitation is very evident in novels.
Mm.
Yeah.
So obviously, novels is very brilliantly fictionalized. I'm not going to say
Mm-hmm.
that everything is happening as a chain reaction of sorts. That
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
the next event is the outcome of the preceding event. That is not the case. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that Panahi scripted the entire thing,
Yeah.
but but he scripted and he ended up making this point.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that is one thing. So, and another thing is that what the aftermath in the aftermath of intervention, the exploitation happens because when a filmmaker uh, sort of enters that particular reality they are trying to capture,
Mm-hmm.
they adopt a frog eye view, like
Mm.
Yes.
they are looking in, they are looking from the inward, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
but they are not able to look inward. They are looking
Mm-hmm.
from the inside, but they are not able to look inward because what they are inhabiting, the reality that they are inhabiting, does not exist inside of them. Like
Mm.
I said, because they don't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
So, uh, so that is the major takeaway for me from novels, and which is why I say it's a sort of revolutionary film in both ways, in terms of the content as well as the form, and also the political goals that it is trying to achieve. It achieves it, and it will.
Very much so. So, Aryan, you go ahead. I'm just mentioning a small point. I mean, it's that whole thing, which is why I think when I watched This Is Not a Film, I was like, this is the total flip side, like the flip side in the sense that it is the mirror image of this, essentially.
Mm.
If that is an act of defiance on the sense that, keep documenting, this is like keep documenting, question mark, or whatever.
Mm.
Or like not just saying no to documenting or whatever it is. But yes. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
poses this question, this conundrum, and then as the film screeches to a halt,
Yeah.
so does he. He similarly pulls the gear and stops his car, and he recognizes, it's that recognition of him picking up on how it is always going to be necessary for him to keep filming, to keep documenting the truth, as we call it. And I think going into Nowheres, through you had watched it first at New York Film Festival, if
Yeah.
I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I obviously you liked the film, but you weren't that high on it, or at least you
I
needed
said
that.
I was really, when I first watched it, I was like, I really need to rewatch it because I thought there are
Yeah,
so many
exactly.
layers to it that if I can like unpick it, like it just keeps on like revealing itself in different sort of ways. So yeah.
Exactly. And going into Nowheres, thankfully I got to watch it at PIF, Pune International Film Festival, earlier this year in February, and something really amazing happened. It was the most anticipated film that I was
Mhm.
looking forward to in that film festival. But something really amazing happened. After watching the film, as I came outside, that's like an hour later, I saw in the top news of that day that Jafar Panahi released from prison. And it happened on the same day I watched the film.
Okay. Wow.
And that was like I think it's one of the most cathartic experiences that I've had, and watching the film with such a respectful crowd. By the end, I was sobbing, I was genuinely sobbing, and I wanted everyone to sit back and not just start exiting the screen. Okay, that's how
Mm.
I couldn't move. That's how
That
impacted.
so I had the same
Yeah.
experience when I watched it the first time. Like I had so in the so essentially in the beginning I was a little, I was
Hmm.
not sure if the film within a film element and the film itself, what
Hmm.
what Panahi was doing was
Yeah.
sort of mixing together for me.
Yeah.
Second watch, of course, it did very much so and all that, but no, the ending happened and I just sank back to my seat and I was like,
Hmm.
I need to sit through it just
Yeah.
to, take it in because I know that it when he hits the break
Break.
essentially,
Yeah. Hmm.
it hit me. It felt like
Hmm.
that. It's I mean it's that gut punch you get of something. I thought that was uh the one which was
And
I'll remember that.
the film opens, and upon my third rewatch today, I realized how similar the opening sequence in Turkey looked to the opening of The White Balloon, which was his
Mhm.
first film. Okay. And while that film marked the voice of a new promising new age filmmaker, Nobes basically sees him frantically make one last move to make a statement about the oppression that he constantly feels dwarfed by. And even on my first watch, what stood out to me most was while watching the film, it was how self-reflexive Panahi had gotten.
Mhm.
And at first, when that moment comes in the third act of the movie, where
Second act end almost, yeah.
yeah, where that actress, I've been
Meena
forgotten her
Kabani.
name. Yeah, where she basically cross-examines Panahi. That,
Yeah.
wait, what are you doing? You can't just
So
exploit.
just to like lay the context for this, and this is
Yeah.
basically whoever's not seen Nobel and listening without whatever, not caring about spoilers. I think
Hmm.
it's this fact that Panahi is shooting a film about
Hmm.
immigration, but he can't go to the place so where it's being shot. So he's shooting it from the village in Iran, and his
Hmm.
crew is there directing these people. And a
Yeah.
lot, and I think before that also you can hear in one of the scenes being shot him speaking
Yeah.
to the actors, I think, within the frame. So I think this, whatever you're saying, sort of leads into this. And uh,
Again, the fact that you basically cut away from the film, right when the film opens up, you know that this is unlike a Panahi movie. This doesn't
mm,
feel the soundscape, and the visuals don't resemble the conventional Panahi outlook, right? And the moment the camera zooms out, and you realize that, oh, it's going to play with this formula. It's a film within
mm-hmm,
a film and
mm-hmm,
all.
mm-hmm,
I think it not only stops at that, the fact that he basically cross examines his own footing in the Iranian culture, but also sit in direct conversation with what sort of control a director himself sits in when he imposes, when he basically stages his actors, right? And I think that scene that we mentioned, I think it brilliantly foregrounds his own authoritative role and experience as the man behind the camera.
he's
When,
one of the bears, right?
yeah, and it's that breaking of the fourth wall, I guess,
Yeah,
where he is beginning to question his own authoritative role behind the camera as how it is perceived by his quote unquote subjects.
yeah,
And I think that is just
yeah. No, it's that multi-layered thing which I think, and I though I think even feel that it reflects on my relationship with Panahi's
with
film.
Panahi,
So
exactly,
it
and
like
that's what.
kind of it's like a loop almost of like
Mhm.
make four or five
And
loops.
whatever looming paranoia that we talked about, that
Yeah,
we sensed in three phases, I think right from the first scene
yeah,
that we get of him in this village, in this remote village, you get this perception that he is being perceived as a troublemaker by these
yeah.
villagers, right? That they know that, oh, he has come from the city,
Except
that
for Ghanbar,
something
I think. Ghanbar is quite nice in the beginning,
who
if you see.
learns how
Yes,
to shoot, hopefully.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the very fact that the narrative cascade, the narrative portion itself begins from Panay taking a picture of a couple that aren't supposed to be together. A picture, by the way, that we never
Yes.
even really see because of that in itself. The fact that we never even see the picture in
Mhm.
itself goes to show the triviality of the actual outcry of the
Of course.
villagers,
Yeah.
because they want to maintain and hold on to this semblance of uh, whatever rules that they have made up, because we all need to tell stories, right, to keep things in check and balance. And what happens when you cross that boundary? Again, this film is, I think,
Boundaries,
it is
borders,
about
everything.
bound. Yeah, and
Hmm.
that scene, I'll get
Oh yeah.
very emotional if I even go on. Yeah,
Go on. It's fine. You can rave. There's no stopping people
it is great.
from
I
doing that.
mean, the scene where he goes out in the middle of the night, where what's his name?
His assistant
Raza,
director.
Reza.
Raza, right?
uh,
Raza,
Ra-
yeah, yeah. Where
Raza or
he's
Reza, something like that.
Raza,
Reza,
Raza, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So when they're sitting in the car, so basically he asks him that you came all the way this far for me, and he's like that it wasn't only because of you. A filmmaker has basically been banned from leaving the country, sitting on the edge of the border. Obviously, I this is the least I could do.
Mhm.
And then once they reach the border, and he asks him that now what happens now, where is the border? And once Raza says that you're standing on the border, the way his mannerisms change and the way he steps back,
I think there's a close up
I
of his
mean,
feet.
yeah,
Yes.
it doesn't just he doesn't just step back. We wait until we reach the shot zooms into his onto his feet, and then we see him step back, and then he asks,
Yeah.
if it's so easy, then why is it so complicated to cross? I just paused this time while watching that scene, and
No, but
I
it's the
think,
true. No, it's like the resonances are there so much,
yeah,
especially today, everywhere in some senses.
yeah,
That
everywhere. And I think it's quite this might throw us off the topic, but whenever I watch these films, especially when I was watching No Bears in that theater, in that auditorium, I couldn't help but think that will Indian filmmakers, will contemporary filmmakers ever reach this level of, I don't even know what it is, but will they ever learn how to bypass the censors in this way to tell such an effective story in this way? But then I also have to keep put things into context and realize that there's been a certain cultural wave in Iran where filmmakers have been challenged to learn a certain way of filming their
mm,
of telling stories,
yeah,
basically to put them across in a way that doesn't offend or doesn't
yeah,
uh, clearly offend the government, right?
yeah.
And it's just, yeah.
Yes,
No
Amit,
ways, it's
I
not,
will give
no,
Aryan a rest
yeah,
so that he
it's
doesn't cry.
not only one of the best film endings, not only one of the best films I've seen ever, but it probably might be the most emotionally affected I've ever been by a film in a theater.
I think
Definitely,
it's going to
because I don't.
be. I genuinely think it's going to have like a very. It's going to be a seminal piece of work for future film
Yeah,
directors. I think. Yeah. Whatever.
definitely.
I think Ashwini was saying about it's like ground. It is. I think groundbreaking in some senses. Amit,
Hmm.
on to you because we have been blabbering a lot.
I mean, before we move on to Amit, I was just gonna
Yes.
mention this brief point that how Aaron is saying that when he puts into the context, there has
Hmm.
been a certain cultural wave in Iran where filmmakers have been forced to tell their stories
Yeah.
in a certain way. I think we are almost there,
Hmm. But
and
I think when
Filmmaking
we,
nahi hai na, but I think is
exactly,
what I think he's
see
saying.
no,
what
so
that meant is that here filmmakers haven't been conditioned to tell stories through such creative avenues in this way, because it was never needed to this extent, okay? And I just hope that
that is what I am
filmmakers in the,
lamenting.
yeah,
That is something I will never hope because that
yeah,
environment is very suffocating. but
Exactly.
we are almost at the standing at the edge of it. But the worst
Hmm.
part is that most of the filmmakers are compliant and not rebellious.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
I'm not going to
So
mention one of the filmmakers I'm thinking of because Ashwini especially doesn't like Almost Pyar with DJ Mohabbat. So, but yes,
Yeah.
yes. Amit, go on,
Yeah.
please.
Okay.
Yes.
So one thing I wanted to say in addition, which isn't really related with the film, is like how Aryan said about how these Iranian filmmakers are conditioned to shoot or film the films the way they film it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've seen something, a collection of posts on Instagram a while back. It was Atomic Cinema of Japan.
Okay.
Bombing has shaped their whole
Hmm.
stuff like Godzilla and all,
Yes, yes, yes.
which is an interesting read, which is like a multi-post read and it is very much in detail.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you should give it a read too.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So coming to the film again, as you said, you need more than a watch to fully comprehend the whole thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, I feel like it's a very great film, very different from other Jafar Panahi films in some way, yet very similar in other ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess I haven't really noticed much stuff other than what you've already mentioned in your post on Instagram, like the whole him viewing the villagers through the window.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I think that was the second watch really made me notice the visual language of the film much more.
yeah,
I think the windows, doors, the
that pipe, I
pillars,
guess. Yeah,
pillars, I
pillars,
think.
But he's always been so good at using
Yes.
these
elements.
tools, these
Yeah, but
this architectural.
this really
Yeah.
plays into the whole camera ka thing, na, what you were saying about distance and like not being
Yeah.
able to be part of that. I think a
Hmm.
lot of times
Hmm.
he's away from the action. He has that safety, which
Yeah.
I have when I'm watching Panahi's films,
Hmm.
which like again you can like extrapolate that and sort of get lost in a sort of
Hmm.
uh reflective maze. It's like going into like one of those, carnivals
Hmm.
where it's what's that, 6 7 mirrors surround you and you can look at like
Hmm.
different reflections of yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But I like the mirror analogy for Nubes quite a bit, actually. I like the cinema is there's. I don't want to go harp on much about film theory because
Hmm.
I think it's a bit boring.
But go on,
But
man.
no, I think it's the cinema as mirror thing is basically that what you like. I think it's one of those things which goes on to essentially argue that cinema is kind of corrupt, or like the idea that it
The
presents
moment
an
you film something,
it
you are
presents an it
corrupting the reality.
because I mean it
Hmm.
sees the viewer as very passive essentially. It
Yeah,
says that
exactly.
what you capture is an illusion that can never be replicated. It can't be
Hmm.
whatever that thing.
Hmm.
So and this I think this is the first time the camera, which has been such a good tool for Panahi, I think that's what
Hmm.
makes it the most heartbreaking in some senses, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
because it's like you begin at a place where that act of filming itself is defiant with this is not a
Hmm.
film, right? But with
Hmm.
no bears, that very act of filming becomes corrupt and becomes a
Hmm.
surveillance device in some senses, which like
Hmm.
reveals stuff about people and their lives and destroys them essentially. Like it is
Hmm.
because Panahi's very clearly implicates himself in killing in the killing of two people that happens in the film's end.
Hmm.
Hmm.
He is not the person taking the action and he doesn't want to take the action, like he's not doing it intentionally, but
Yeah.
it does have those effects and he
And
reckons with them.
the fact
So
that at the beginning of the film, you see the same kind of event being taken, the same kind of event, the feet washing thing that
yes,
you see through the camera. Okay, and you see how a groom gets validated by the society by those celebrations, cultural celebrations, and then at the end, at the same place, you see two dead bodies
yeah,
Hmm.
as Panahi himself watches and drives through it until
yeah. I
he.
think we never get a close up, right? Or
Yeah.
or anything. It's just that
Yeah.
distant view of Panahi and the village.
Yeah.
I think Ghanbar only is it Ghanbar? Maybe he's
Yeah.
basically like,
Ganga.
you leave, please leave from here. You
I'll
Hmm.
have
can't.
to go. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go from here. You can't stay. You can't watch.
Hmm.
Uh, And yeah, it's no, that final stretch especially just uh disturbing,
It
heartbreaking,
is
whatever.
disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, is that it? Should we finish on
I'm,
that really despair-filled note? Uh,
And
okay.
I think the fact that it's just these little things that still go on to uh, evoke a certain sense of evoke some hope that when he is asked to confess, basically he insists on rather shooting it on camera rather than placing his
Hmm.
oath on the Quran. And
mm.
then how it backfires because he dares to challenge, or not even challenge, just question the rituals. And
He's
then
yeah. I think
yeah,
challenge is never
yeah.
Panahi's like challenge doesn't he is of course challenging them through his films, but as a person, I
Hmm.
think I don't know what to think about it because I feel at some point in time I have this also. I have a sort of habit to be almost resigned with
Hmm.
acceptance. I'm like, what
Hmm.
is the point of
Yeah,
arguing or saying or
yeah.
doing something, even though I know there's great value in it,
Hmm.
but you're just tired, right, of like hearing
Hmm.
the people
Hmm.
not willing to change their points of view, or like
Hmm.
being so stuck up in their own points of view that you're just like, should I even like talk? And I
Hmm.
think this kind of was there in Three Faces also. Like there's this bemusement when
Hmm.
they're looking at these people sometimes, and it's not condescending at all. It's like it's half almost. I understand what you know. Like I
Yeah,
understand it's part of your culture.
yeah.
I still find it so absurd. Like that
Hmm.
sentiment is there with all his films. I feel like, which is why I think they work very well. If you are
Hmm.
Hmm.
condescending and you shout about it, I feel a lot of times that sort of goes like that doesn't, to me that feels more like white noise. It'll like be heard and then slapped out.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But I think it's like it lingers so much that
And I've always, maybe it's just the convenient that we as consumers of movies or culture or content, as people call it, are we are so used to getting
please, nowheres is
these.
not content, okay? Yeah, I'm not clubbing it in as content. That's an
But
insult, Arya.
maybe it's because of how we like to get these summarized portions after watching anything. But I have always loved movies that contain certain scenes or just one specific scene that go on to encompass what the actual film is all about. Okay, what it's functioning at. And I think I'll just say this right now that I genuinely think Nobel is my favorite Panahi film because of that one specific scene where they're just standing at the crossroads in the dark, and where we
Hmm.
watch them from the distance, and when he asks that, wait, didn't you say that there are bears, so I have to be careful, that's why I always need to be with someone with some kind of
Yes.
surveillance or a protective mechanism, whatever.
Hmm.
And that's when that village or the local says that there are no bears, these are just stories made up to scare us.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that is it's just
Yeah. Okay, I think that's Ashwini. Any last words, or should I close it now?
Yeah. I mean, let's close it soon. I
Let's
was
close
just
Yeah.
it.
thinking that how Panahi has been the subject of all his films in the post-arrest phase,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and in nowheres, like we said, that he's critiquing his position and the impact of images,
Hmm.
and when taking from the very brief scene in which he sort of attempts to not attempt but mentions in passing that his discomfort with the institutions traditions in the village,
Hmm.
and it triggers almost an argument, and all the testifying ceremony gets disrupted.
Yeah.
So one comes to think how he is the lie. He is, like you mentioned, Dhruv, that he's the bear. He's one of the bears. He is the
Hmm.
I
lie
mean,
in
that's
that
the
case.
tragic only thing. I mean, it's so tragic because
Yeah.
I know he doesn't. I mean, of course, he also doesn't intend to be. He is trying to help. He is the like he is trying. Like that's I think the most dispiriting and despairing thing, right? Like you've seen this person try to really fight for things and show
Even when he
things.
gets persecuted
Yeah,
by
fight for things, show
people around
things
him.
which, but then those very things when they
Hmm.
incriminate the people involved,
Yeah.
it is
That
you.
is the
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Th-
I
that
mean, it's yeah.
that is because truth, like it's a lamentation only that the existence of truth is so much dependent on belief system,
Hmm.
Yeah.
and it's not just for the traditions themselves, but also for for whatever is happening within the film. Then, like him, whether he took the photograph or not,
Hmm.
right?
Mhm.
Or whether there are bears along the route or not. All of that is an outcome of the belief system. So
Yep.
that is why we are not able to ever register that yes, he might not have taken the photograph, because
Hmm.
every time we come very close to believing it that yes, that is the truth, he does not have the photograph, there is something that disrupts it and we are back to our suspicious mind. Like
Exactly.
even as audience, we completely do not believe whether
Yeah.
Panahi took the photograph or
Mhm.
not, whether
Hmm.
he might not have been taken it very in an aware way, but it got captured, you know.
Hmm.
Yep.
So we always come close to believing it without fully
Hmm.
believing it.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
and so that reflects the dependency of truth on the belief system. It does not become a truth for us
On
because we are
even
not
our
able to
belief
believe it.
systems.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. For
Hmm.
us, for the audience, for also the villagers, because nobody is able to believe completely, and that's why
Hmm.
it's not becoming a truth. Even in the testifying, when he sort of thinks that maybe implicating the camera will
Hmm. Solve
register,
everything.
establish the truth, establish it in a very concrete way, it does not
Mhm.
happen so,
Hmm.
right? Because truth is dependent on belief, and that's why maybe the Quran thing would have worked better. You
Mhm.
Hmm.
know how they actually had planned it. So
Hmm.
in the aftermath, you see that three people are dead, and
Mhm.
it's not because he caused the death, but because his intervention, he disturbed the reality in a way that
Mhm.
led made the environment conducive of these three
Hmm.
deaths,
Yep.
because all the three people felt compelled the
Mhm.
couple felt compelled to flee because the environment turned hostile on them,
Yep.
and this Bakhtiyar guy felt compelled to lie because again the environment was hostile and he wanted Zara to
Mhm.
leave,
Yep.
right? So there was a sort of uh, environment which compelled these people to act in a way, and that environment was in adulterated by Panahi's presence.
Yes. Yes. He's the
So
mediator in some senses in both these stories.
Or the
yeah,
disruptor.
Hmm?
and yet he does not have a moment to stop when he
Hmm.
sees
Yes.
the closing sequence, when he sees the dead body. He is startled, but he does not have a moment to stop because
Mhm.
reality has passed. So
Mhm.
images have left an outcome,
Yep.
and the images will exist forever now.
Yep. Yep.
So it's very interesting as an experiment, but also as a commentary in itself.
No, no, it's like emotional devastation in many senses. I think I think it's just more. It's when it's what you said. I think the whole ideology, form, content, everything sort of have meeting at a very high level of at a
Hmm.
high level of like the intersection point is at like the pinnacle in some senses. Uh, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's a great note to end. I suppose the discussion on Jafar Panahi. We look forward always to more films from him. Now let's see what he makes. I mean, I'm always curious to. I think all of us will be always curious to see whatever he makes.
Even though
Mm,
Um,
he's being
definitely.
released, the supposed ban
the
is
filmmaking
still
ban
in
is still
place,
there.
right?
Yeah,
Till 20
filmmaking ban.
years.
20 years. So I think it was imposed in 2010 or 2011. So what, till
Hmm.
2030, 31.
Hmm.
But yes. And maybe travel ban is also still in effect, if I'm not wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah. So yes, thank you so much for listening. I will be editing this episode extensively so that it is in listenable shape for every listener. I hope we find new Panahi fans. We
Hmm.
communicate non-Panahi fans to watch some Panahi films at least,
Hmm.
and please watch his son's film also. That's also great.
Yeah.
Uh, Hit the Road. It's a really good film, and. Thank you so much for listening. And
Hmm.
you can follow, yes, I see, I forgot almost. You can follow all these people, wonderful people who accompanied me on this episode on Instagram, Letterboxd. I think those two are the main places, and I will be linking all the handles and information down there. But yes, khatam.